Have you ever wondered what secrets the world hides in silence? Tonight, we wander through the lost heart of the desert in Merv, the painted stillness of the Dunhuang Mogao Caves, the forgotten kingdom of Subashi, the eternal stone scriptures of the Dazu Rock Carvings, and the echoing corridors of Maijishan Grottoes. Each chapter holds whispers of civilizations long gone, mysteries carved in stone, and stories that time itself has almost forgotten. The lost city of Merv, the desert that remembers. Somewhere deep in the vast silence of Turkmenistan's desert lies the sleeping skeleton of a city once called Merv. The wind that moves across its sands carries more than dust, it carries memory. If you stand there long enough, between the broken domes and half-buried walls, you might feel it, a soft hum beneath the ground, as if the earth itself remembers the footsteps that once shaped empires. The air is dry, thin, but ancient, older than the stories that tried to name it. Merv was not always this silent. Thousands of years ago it shimmered in the heat like a mirage, a city of light and trade, where caravans came from Persia, India, and China, bringing silk, gemstones, spices, and ideas. It was called Margiana in the earliest whispers of history, a word that feels like wind on the tongue. The Persians knew it, the Greeks wrote of it, Alexander the Great marched near its gates, and yet today, it lies so still that even time seems hesitant to disturb it. If you were to walk through Merv now, you'd see mounds of clay rising from the dust like sleeping giants. They call them kala, fortresses. Each one holds a different age, a different civilization buried within its heart. There's Kala, the oldest one, a circular citadel built almost 3,000 years ago, surrounded by walls thick enough to stop time itself. It feels strange to stand there, to touch those rough bricks, and know that beneath them are the layers of 100 forgotten cities, built, burned, rebuilt, and forgotten again. When the night falls over Merv, something happens to the ruins. The desert cools, the winds slow, and the outlines of the old walls glow faintly under the moon. From the darkness, the ruins look almost alive, like the ribs of some enormous creature fossilized in sand. Archaeologists say it was one of the great cities of the Silk Road, a place that linked the heart of Asia to the farthest edges of the world. But those who've slept among its ruins say that the city dreams. They say that if you listen closely, you can hear whispers, faint, rhythmic, the sound of old prayers, old languages, breathing through the cracks of history. The story of Merv is one of rebirth and destruction. It was Persian, then Greek, then Parthian, then Sasanian, then Islamic, reborn as the queen of the world. Each empire left its mark, but none could hold it forever. Like a shifting dune, Merv belonged to no one, and perhaps that is why it survived in silence. By the 12th century it was said that Merv rivaled Baghdad, a jewel of libraries, scholars, gardens, and gold. Its canals carried water across the desert like veins of life. Poets wrote of its beauty. Travelers said its bazaars never slept. Imagine it, lanterns swinging in the night wind, the smell of saffron and ink and fire, the murmuring of scholars arguing about the stars. And then, in one terrible moment, everything changed. In the year 1221, the Mongols came. Led by Tolui, son of Genghis Khan, they surrounded Merv. The gates were opened after promises of mercy, but mercy never came. History says that over 1 million souls perished. A river of life ended in a single storm. For days the city burned so fiercely that even the sand turned to glass. The wind carried the ashes of its people across the desert, and the queen of the world fell into silence. When archaeologists first dug here, centuries later, they found more questions than answers. Layers upon layers of civilization, stacked like forgotten dreams. The bones of temples beneath mosques, the bones of mosques beneath fortresses, pottery that didn't belong to any known empire, tools made by hands no one could name, and beneath all of it, traces of something older, deeper, foundations made of a material that didn't match the era at all. Even now they wonder who built the first Merv. Some believe it began not as a city, but as a sacred outpost, a marker aligned with the stars, a point where desert travelers would look up and know where they were. If you walk to the top of the citadel at dusk, the world turns gold for a moment. The horizon burns, the ruins stretch into shadow, and the air fills with an echo, a sound that could be wind, or could be memory. There's a strange comfort in that sound, because even though Merv is gone, it feels awake, as if the city has chosen silence, not death. As if it still remembers the warmth of human life, the rhythm of voices, the songs of water in its canals. Many say that Merv hides something beneath it, tunnels that stretch for miles, leading to chambers never mapped. Old tales claim that the last scholars of Merv hid their scrolls deep underground, locking them in stone sarcophagi to protect them from the fire. Others believe the Mongols found those tunnels and sealed them, but every few years the sand shifts. The Dunhuang Mogao Caves, the painted silence of the desert. There's a silence that only deserts know, the kind that swallows even time itself. And deep within that silence, where the Gobi Desert meets the edge of China's ancient Silk Road, stands something almost impossible, a cliffside of 1,000 painted souls, frozen in prayer. They call it Mogao. the caves of 1,000 Buddhas. But those who've been there say it feels less like a place and more like a memory that refuses to fade. The wind is gentle here, but dry, carrying the taste of dust and centuries. When you walk toward the Mogao Caves, you don't hear the world, you feel it. The echo of footsteps on sand, the faint whistling of wind through hollow doors, and that soft vibration, like the heartbeat of something ancient, sleeping just beneath the stone. These caves weren't built for tourists or kings. They were carved by hands that believed they were touching eternity. Over 1,500 years ago, a Buddhist monk named Lazun wandered through this desert. He was tired, parched, and almost lost. But as the story goes, one night, as the sun set in golden fire over the cliffs, he saw something strange. A vision, thousands of shining Buddhas glowing across the face of the mountain. And so, right there, he picked up a chisel and began to carve. That single act became the seed of a wonder that would outlive dynasties. Over the next millennium, pilgrims, monks, artists, and emperors would come to this desert edge. Each one added a cave, a room of color and devotion. They painted walls, carved statues, and built shrines, not for fame, but for the journey of the soul. Each brushstroke whispered with faith. Each pigment crushed from stone and plant was meant to shine forever, even in the dark. When you enter the first cave, the air changes. It's cool, still. The scent of old paint and sand lingers, like the breath of time itself. On the walls are oceans of color, reds that still burn, blues that still dream, golds that shimmer in the faint light of your lamp. You see entire galaxies of devotion, Buddhas floating among clouds, saints walking through paradise, demons lurking in shadows, and travelers crossing deserts under the protection of unseen gods. It's overwhelming, and yet it's peaceful, as if you've stepped into someone else's dream, painted thousands of years ago, still alive, still waiting. The Mogao Caves are more than paintings. They are an archive of humanity. There are over 700 caves carved into the sandstone, each filled with art, statues, and ancient manuscripts. Some are small, barely enough for one person to sit and meditate. Others are vast, echoing halls with ceilings so high they disappear into darkness, painted with stars. And somewhere among them lies a secret that changed the story of Asia forever. In 1900, a Taoist caretaker named Wang Yuanlu discovered a sealed chamber behind one of the cave walls. When he opened it, dust poured out like smoke, and then he saw it. Thousands upon thousands of scrolls, stacked from floor to ceiling, untouched for almost 1,000 years. There were scriptures, letters, maps, contracts, and paintings on silk, a frozen time capsule from the 10th century. Historians call it the Library Cave. Inside were texts in Chinese, Sanskrit, Tibetan, Sogdian, Hebrew, even unknown languages. It was as if the Silk Road itself had left its soul in that chamber. But not all stories end gently. When word of the discovery spread, foreign explorers rushed to Dunhuang. They offered money, little but tempting for a poor monk, and so, cart after cart of priceless manuscripts were taken to London, Paris, St. Petersburg, and beyond. The desert kept the memory, but the caves were left hollowed. Even now, the debate lingers. Who truly owns the past? Still, Mogao endures. The remaining caves hold colors so vivid they almost breathe. Scientists are still unsure how the pigments lasted this long. Some say it's the dry air. Others believe the artists mixed minerals that modern chemistry can't replicate. Under candlelight, the figures seem to move, like they're watching you. And sometimes, when the wind hits just right, the desert hums through the hollow caves, and it feels like the paintings are whispering, softly, endlessly, to each other. But the true wonder of Mogao isn't the art. It's the feeling that time doesn't pass the same way here. Each brushstroke feels like a heartbeat frozen in rock. Each statue feels like it's still praying. Some caves are so perfectly symmetrical, aligned with celestial geometry, that researchers believe they were built to echo the movement of the stars, as if the heavens themselves were invited to meditate. There's a cave called Cave 96, home to a giant Buddha over 35 meters tall. When you look up at it, your breath catches. The face is calm, serene, but the eyes, half closed, seem to see through you. They say that if you stare long enough, you'll feel your heartbeat slow to match the rhythm of the stone. That's what the monks wanted, to make time stop, to make you forget the world outside. In some caves, you'll find paintings of travelers, men on camels, merchants with maps, monks with scrolls, all frozen mid-journey. It's a strange, almost poetic reminder that Dunhuang was never just an end, it was a crossroads, a place where people met, rested, prayed, and then vanished back into the desert, like stars crossing the night sky, bright for a moment, then gone. Even today, archaeologists working here speak of strange feelings. Tools go missing, lights flicker, cameras fail. Some say it's just the heat. Others whisper that the spirits of the painters still linger, protecting their work from the eyes of the unworthy. The desert, after all, doesn't give up its secrets easily. At night, the cliffs glow silver under the moonlight. You can't see the paintings, but you can sense them, behind the walls, behind the centuries. It's easy to imagine that every cave breathes together, slowly, like a sleeping giant. And as the cold settles in, and the stars stretch endlessly across the black desert sky, you realize, these caves aren't ruins, they're memory made solid. The Mogao Caves are proof that art can outlive empire, that faith can outlast stone, that even in the emptiest places on earth, the human spirit can leave a mark that time itself can't erase. When dawn comes, the Subashi ruins, the forgotten kingdom of the silk sands. Somewhere in the quiet belly of the Taklamakan Desert, where the wind moves like an old sigh, and the earth smells of sand and stone, there lies a forgotten skeleton of a city. A city that once shimmered beneath the sun, filled with life, trade, prayer, and silence. Today they call it Subashi. But once, long ago, it had another name. One the wind might still remember. Now, all that remains are the bones of its temples, the melted faces of its Buddha statues, and walls half swallowed by the desert that once worshipped them. When you arrive here, it feels like stepping into a mirage. There's no sound of people, no birds, no running water, only the shifting of fine sand, brushing softly against the ruins like a whisper. It's hard to imagine that this emptiness was once a center of life, a Buddhist kingdom of the Kucha people, beating with devotion and color, centuries before the sands came. The Subashi ruins sit near the banks of the Muzat River, not far from the modern city of Kuka, in Xinjiang, western China. Once upon a time, this place was a jewel of the Silk Road, that ancient artery connecting east and west, where merchants carried silk, jade, spices, and stories across endless dunes. The Subashi temple complex stood like a beacon for travelers, a monastery of peace amid the wilderness, and now, only the wind prays here. When the morning light rises, it hits the yellow stones and turns them gold. The air smells of dust and history. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear the chanting of monks that once filled these halls, deep voices echoing through corridors, bouncing off walls painted with the life of the Buddha. Those colors are gone now, washed away by 1,000 storms. But if you run your hand along the walls, you can still feel the faint texture of the murals, as if the paint itself once pulsed with life. Archaeologists believe Subashi was built around the 5th century CE, during a time when Buddhism flourished across the Tarim Basin. It wasn't just a temple, it was a world. There were shrines, monasteries, prayer halls, and a grand stupa that once rose proudly into the desert sky. The people of Kucha were known as musicians, poets, and translators. They took the teachings of India and carried them east, to China and beyond. Subashi was one of their hearts, a sacred center of learning. But all light fades. By the 9th century, trade routes changed, empires fell, and the desert began its slow, patient work, swallowing everything that stood still. The people left, or perhaps were taken by the wind. The river changed course, and the Golden Kingdom became dust. When explorers rediscovered Subashi in the late 19th century, led by the European archaeologists Aurel Stein and Albert Grunwedel, they were stunned. Among the ruins, they found fragments of painted plaster, broken statues of serene Buddhas, and wooden beams blackened by time. Some of the sculptures, delicate, human, almost alive, were shipped to museums far away. Others were left behind, too fragile to move, too sacred to touch. Many were later destroyed, by sand, by war, or by silence. Even now the Subashi Buddha, once said to stand over 10 meters tall, lies broken, its head long gone. The pedestal remains facing east, as if still waiting for the sunrise that will never come. Sometimes, local shepherds pass by and pause to bow their heads. They say this land still breathes with something holy. At night, the ruins change. The day's heat fades, and the cold seeps in. The sand turns silver under the moonlight. If you stand quietly, you might hear the faint rattle of wind through hollow walls, like the echo of a long-forgotten prayer. It's the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels full, like it's holding something just out of reach. Maybe it's the memory of the monks who once lived here. Maybe it's the weight of all the pilgrims who stopped, rested, and kept walking. You can imagine it, a torchlight flickering inside a cave, a monk writing sutras by hand on paper made from mulberry bark, a traveler offering coins at the altar before setting off into the endless dunes. Each moment, ordinary and sacred, layered upon each other, until the sand closed in and froze them all in time. What remains today is fragile, walls half standing, arches half gone. But even in their ruin, the design speaks, curved forms, the symmetry of old Buddhist architecture, the geometry of faith carved in the wild. Some walls still hold faint red stains, maybe from the paint, or maybe from fire. No one knows. No one can tell if it was devotion or destruction that ended this place. Scientists say the Muzat River's shift caused the city's fall, but others think it was something deeper: political changes, invasions, or simple abandonment. Whatever the reason, Subashi became one of the many ghost cities of the Silk Road, lost beneath time, until the wind uncovered it again. And yet, there's something hauntingly peaceful about it. The way the light lands on those old bricks, the way the desert wraps around it like a soft shroud, it feels less like a ruin, and more like a temple still in prayer. Not for gods, but for memory. Every brick of Subashi was made by hand, by faith. Every statue, painted with care by people who believed beauty could transcend death. And in a way, they were right, because here we are, thousands of years later, still speaking their names, still searching their broken halls, still listening to their silence. Sometimes I wonder what the last monk of Subashi thought before leaving. Did he know it was the end? Did he look back at the temple one last time, watching the sun fall behind the hills, and whisper a final blessing into the wind? Maybe he thought, the desert will keep it safe, and somehow, it did. Because even now, beneath the endless sky, surrounded by nothing but shifting dunes, Subashi still stands. Crumbled, yes. Silent, yes. But alive, in a way that defies explanation. And when you look closely at the eroded faces of the statues, you might notice something strange. Their eyes, even in ruin, are calm, peaceful, as if they knew this was always how it would be. That even if the walls fell and the names were forgotten, the spirit of what they built would remain. The Subashi ruins aren't just an archaeological site, they are a memory in stone, a quiet heartbeat in the desert that refuses to stop. A message carved into silence, reminding us that time erases everything, except meaning. So tonight, as you listen to the wind outside your window, imagine the same wind drifting across those ruins, brushing past ancient stones, whispering through empty corridors, carrying with it the last echoes of monks chanting beneath the stars. Because in the heart of the desert, nothing is truly lost, it's only waiting to be remembered. The Dazu Rock Carvings. Whispers of stone and spirit. There is a quiet valley in the misty hills of Chongqing, China. The air here feels older than time, as if the mountains themselves breathe in slow rhythm with the earth. In this valley lies one of humanity's most mysterious expressions of devotion, the Dazu Rock Carvings. When you first arrive, the world feels hushed. The air carries the scent of moss and stone. The walls rise around you, carved not by machines or tools of metal precision, but by hands guided by faith, patience, and something almost divine. Every groove, every face, every story etched into these rocks feels like a whisper from a civilization that never truly left. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine standing at the edge of a forest path, early morning mist curling at your feet. You take a slow breath, and as you exhale, you see them, hundreds of figures, serene and eternal, carved into cliffs that glow with a faint golden hue. These are not just statues, they are dreams frozen in stone. The Dazu Rock Carvings began around the 7th century during the late Tang dynasty and continued into the Song dynasty, a span of centuries where art and faith intertwined. What's most fascinating is not just their scale, but their soul. Unlike the cold temples of empire, these carvings feel intimate. They tell stories of kindness, compassion, morality, and the path toward enlightenment. Stories for farmers, travelers, and lost souls seeking light in a darkened world. Walk a little further, and you'll find yourself in front of a massive wall, where hundreds of figures appear mid-movement. Buddhas, bodhisattvas, guardians, demons, all frozen in scenes of both peace and chaos. Some smile softly, others seem to weep. It's as if they capture every emotion humans have ever known. Now picture this: the sculptors who made these masterpieces didn't have chisels of steel or modern scaffolding. They climbed cliffs barefoot, guided only by the light of oil lamps and their faith. Each strike of their tools echoed through the valley, mixing with the sounds of wind and water, the rhythm of creation. Some historians believe the carvings were inspired by Buddhist teachings that had traveled from India, blended with Taoist and Confucian ideals. Yet when you look closer, something else stirs, something more universal. You start to feel that these carvings are not just about religion, but about what it means to be human, about pain, about peace, about the silent hope that our stories will outlive us. Imagine the scene at night, centuries ago. A small village nearby, lanterns flickering in the distance, a monk kneeling before a half-finished carving, whispering prayers for guidance. He carves the curve of a smile into a deity's face, maybe not because he was told to, but because he believed even gods deserve warmth. That single touch of kindness is still there, preserved in stone. As you walk deeper into the complex, you come to Baodingshan, one of the most sacred sections. Here, the carvings spread like a visual scripture, hundreds of images forming a grand story of existence. One of the most remarkable scenes shows the wheel of life, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The figures swirl around it like waves, each face unique, each expression telling you that life is fleeting but beautiful. The sound of birds and distant streams blend with your heartbeat, the world slows. Every face in the stone seems to breathe as light shifts across their features. The details are astonishing. Eyes so delicate they still seem wet with emotion. Robes so finely carved you can almost feel their texture. But here's the mystery. No one truly knows why these carvings were made in such abundance, or how their artists achieved this level of precision with such primitive tools. Some believe it was divine inspiration. Others think it was a collective act of love, a way for the people to immortalize their faith when words were not enough. And in some ways, maybe both are true. As centuries passed, the valley remained hidden from the wider world. Trees grew tall, roots crept along the stone faces, and the voices of the carvers faded. For a long time, the Dazu carvings slept beneath layers of time and silence, untouched, forgotten, waiting. Then, when explorers rediscovered them, it was as if the earth itself had revealed a secret, a reminder that beauty does not belong to one age or one people, but to everyone willing to look closely enough. There is something humbling about standing there today. You can almost feel the pulse of the men and women who carved those walls. Their sweat, their devotion, their quiet defiance of impermanence. It's like they're still here, whispering softly in your ear. You are part of this story too, and as you trace your fingers along the cold stone, you notice that the carvings are not just outside of you, they awaken something inside you. You begin to understand what they understood, that enlightenment is not about escaping life, but embracing it. The cracks, the imperfections, the fleeting moments of joy and sorrow, all of it is sacred. The Dazu Rock Carvings are not merely an ancient monument, they are a mirror, a silent, unending mirror where humanity has carved its longing to understand itself. So now, as the light fades and the forest hums softly around you, you find a quiet spot to sit. The air is cool, the stone beneath your fingers feels alive. You close your eyes and imagine the carvers, the monks, the pilgrims who once stood here centuries ago. You realize that even though their names are forgotten, their spirit still breathes in every inch of this place, and for a moment, just one, you feel completely still. The world stops rushing, the noise inside your head quiets down. You listen to the sound of the earth itself exhaling. Maybe that's what they wanted all along, to help us remember how to be silent, to listen, to breathe. In this stillness, surrounded by the ancient whisper of stone and spirit, you understand what the carvings were always trying to say. That peace was never far away, it was always within you. The Maijishan Grottoes, echoes in stone. Hidden along the steep cliffs of Tianshui in Gansu Province, China, there lies a series of caves that seem almost suspended between the earth and the sky. These are the Maijishan Grottoes, carved into the reddish cliffs that rise above the valley like ancient sentinels, quietly watching over the land for more than 1,000 years. As you approach, the cliffs tower overhead, the stone walls weathered but still strong, holding stories whispered through centuries. There is a soft, almost sacred hum in the air, perhaps the wind passing through the caves, perhaps the echo of ancient prayers lingering in the stone. You step closer, and a slow calm descends, as though time itself has decided to pause here. The grottos were first begun in the later Qin dynasty, around the 4th century CE, a time when Buddhism was spreading along the Silk Road. Carved by monks and artisans, these caves were not just simple shelters or tombs. They were visions made tangible, a union of devotion, artistry, and human patience. Each niche, each statue, each mural was a careful act of reverence, an offering to the divine, and an invitation to those who walked these paths to find stillness and reflection. As you walk along the narrow stone pathways, you notice the carvings, hundreds of Buddhas, bodhisattvas, and guardian figures frozen in time, each unique. Their faces carry expressions that are impossible to replicate, some serene, some compassionate, some stern but protective. The sheer number of statues, stacked into the cliff face, gives the feeling that the entire mountainside has been folded in devotion, like a prayer carved into the earth itself. Imagine for a moment the artisans of that time. They climbed the cliffs with ropes and wooden scaffolds, chisels in hand, carefully etching each figure into the stone. Their hands moved slowly, deliberately. Perhaps they whispered prayers with each strike of the hammer, or maybe they sang soft chants that echoed along the red rock faces. It is hard to imagine the courage, patience, and faith required to create such enduring beauty, high above the valley floor, where a single misstep could end everything. As you pause in front of a particularly large statue, you notice the details, the folds of the robe, the gentle tilt of the head, the faint smile that seems to watch over the valley below. The statue is immense, yet its expression is tender. There is a paradox here, grandeur and gentleness coexisting, as if the cliff itself had learned the art of balance from the monks who carved it. The Maijishan Grottoes are also home to murals, painted long ago with mineral pigments that have survived the centuries. The colors are muted now, softened by time, but you can still make out scenes of celestial realms, monks in meditation, and devotees offering gifts. Each mural tells a story, not just of faith, but of the people who lived, traveled, and dreamed along the Silk Road. Now let your mind drift. Picture the quiet nights of ancient China, the valley below bathed in moonlight. Lanterns sway in the wind as travelers rest before continuing their journey. Inside the grottos, a lone monk sits cross-legged, hands resting gently on his knees, chanting softly. The sound is almost imperceptible, but it travels through the stone and up the cliffs, as if the mountain itself listens and responds. The grottos are not uniform. Each cave is unique, some small and intimate, others vast and cathedral-like. Some house single statues, while others hold entire ensembles, like miniature temples carved into stone. Walking among them, you can feel the weight of history, but also a lightness, as though the devotion of generations has filled these walls with a calm that persists even today. What makes Maijishan particularly enigmatic is how the carvings have endured. The cliffs have seen earthquakes, storms, and centuries of weathering, yet the statues remain. Some scholars wonder at the techniques used, the methods lost to time, perhaps taught by masters who understood the stone and spirit in ways we can only guess at now. There is a mystery here, not in the grand gestures, but in the subtle details, how a small crack in the cliff was turned into a niche, how every carving, no matter how high, seems to be perfectly balanced with its surroundings. And as you wander higher along the cliffs, the valley below unfolds. You see rivers winding, forests shifting in the breeze, villages scattered like tiny pieces of the earth. The grottos rise above it all, silent yet commanding. They feel alive, not in the sense of motion, but in presence, as if the mountains remember every hand that touched the stone, every prayer uttered, every footstep that climbed the stairs. The Maijishan Grottoes are more than a historical site. They are a meditation. They remind us of human perseverance, the beauty of dedication, and the quiet power of faith. Even as the world rushes forward, here, time slows. The cliff whispers to anyone willing to listen, urging patience, reflection, and stillness. So now, as you settle into this ancient valley, imagine the soft sounds of stone meeting chisel, the faint scent of old earth, the hush of wind over carved rock. Close your eyes for a moment, and allow yourself to drift along with the centuries. Feel the calm of the monks, the patience of the artists, and the quiet majesty of the mountain itself. In this stillness, perhaps you can hear it, a faint whisper carried down from the cliffs, reminding you that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but experienced. That in the silence of stone and the passage of centuries, there is a deep, abiding peace waiting for those who take the time to listen.